Welcome to the Teach Joyfully podcast, where we talk about all things elementary teaching with some mom stuff thrown in. I'm Lisa Burns, a teacher success coach, veteran elementary teacher, and mom of 5. I'll be your host. Thanks for joining me today. Teaching writing is one of the areas that I find teachers struggle with most. It's such a personal and tricky thing to teach. And quite honestly, it's one area we can sometimes feel unqualified or less confident in because we doubt our own ability to write well. Unfortunately, that's kind of the nature of being a writer. We're our own worst critics, aren't we? Well, we do all the right things when teaching writing, like giving directed feedback, assessing regularly, using rubrics, providing lots of practice, and on. It's easy to forget a few basics in all the moving parts. In case you haven't guessed, today's episode is all about teaching writing. It doesn't matter what grade you're teaching. From primary to upper elementary, writing is an important skill for all students, and it builds over the years, all of those skills. But it can be easier to teach than you think. So here are some simple ways to help your students improve their writing abilities and their craft. In order to teach anyone how to write well, we have to break writing down into small pieces. Yes, we want to attack it as a whole, but we also have to bring down some of the skills into smaller pieces. We must actually teach the craft of writing. So working on our craft, or helping our students work on the writer's craft, is really important. One way we can help our students work on their writer's craft is by bringing in great examples of writing. By using great examples of writing, and I know you're shocked, mentor texts are the way to do it. It really is true. And a mentor text doesn't always mean a book. It could be an article. It could be a story in a newspaper. It could be lots of different things. There's lots of examples of writing. It depends on what it is that you're trying to teach your students. So just because I advocate for picture books so much of the time, it doesn't mean that's the only text that we use. We can even bring in our own writing to use for this purpose. It's also important to bring in multiple examples to show our students and share with them, because we want to compare and contrast those so our students get a feel for the fact that there's more than one way to do the same kinds of things in writing. There isn't just one way to describe the scene. There isn't just one way to describe a character. There isn't just one way to do almost anything in writing. There's multiple ways. And so giving students lots of examples gives them some opportunities to make some decisions and to really develop their own personal sense of style and voice within their writing as well. Another way we can help our students is with small moments. Now, I know you've probably already heard this before, but that idea of using small moments and really looking at one tiny moment in detail really does help students slow things down and learn how to describe things and talk about something in great detail. Small moments are about savoring a moment in time, something that takes place in a matter of minutes rather than across an entire day or an entire week. It really is focusing on something very, very small. It can be a short conversation. It could be a meal. It could be just one small piece of a whole day. It could be the flash of a memory. There's lots of things that it could be. Focusing on a small moment can be really helpful to students as they learn to start talking about larger things like an entire day or a week. And it shows them that sometimes the details can be very powerful. You can use one small moment in the larger context of a week or a month or even a year to really highlight something, a feeling, a mood, all kinds of things. And so using that can be very powerful. But we have to start small before we can go big. Another way is talking to students about showing, not telling. Now, we say this all the time, but do we really know how to teach that? Showing, not telling isn't just about telling me what color the dog was or how he behaved that he growled. It's so much more than that. This is where we give our reader the opportunity to find some hints about what's to come, or to infer about what's actually happening, or to understand the relationships between the characters. It's about the dialogue that a character is having with other characters or even with themselves. It is about their facial expressions. It's about their gestures. How are they moving? How are they not moving? It's about their internal thinking and showing what's happening within our characters, while we also are showing what's happening in the story. How are they reacting to it or acting upon things that are happening within the story? All of these are showing, not telling. These pieces are really important, but students don't always clue into that. So it's good to point them out and have an opportunity for students to simply show you something, not tell you. So giving them mini assignments where they get to just practice some of these things, where they get to practice a small moment, where they get to practice showing, not telling. Not within the context of them writing a longer piece, but simply as an exercise. This is a great way to practice. So it's really a quick write. Having quick writes for all of these pieces really is an opportunity for students to play around and try these things out, as opposed to trying to figure them out within the context of a larger piece. They need to practice these skills separately in order to be able to do them within the confines of the longer story that they're writing. Using wordless books is also a great help. Wordless books are fabulous for inspiring your students to describe a setting in more detail, to play with dialogue, or even to develop characters. The story is really already there. They just have to provide the details, which is what we really want to work on, isn't it? Another way to help students really define characters is by taking familiar characters from stories they know and putting them in some sort of previous setting or just a different setting. Students have to play with developing their characters by writing a familiar character's story in a different setting. It could be a backstory, something that happened previous to the story that they've read, or it could simply be taking the character and giving them a whole new story. But either way, they have to develop some different nuances to the character to fit what they're doing in the new story. I love it when an author takes characters from one of their other books and has them make cameo appearances in a newer book. It's lots of fun and the kids get a kick out of it. I've even seen this done in board books. But either way, they have to develop that character for the new setting and the new events that will occur. Timelines are another way to help students really work on their writer's craft. Giving students a timeline of events for a character's week and then have them write about the details of the last event on the timeline while referring back to the previous events is a really great technique. It's something that writers do, referring back to things that have happened prior that maybe weren't actually detailed in the story, but hinting back to them as important to what's happening in the current moment. It's a powerful technique and it can be lots of fun. You can make this task very doable by giving your students the timeline events already so that they don't have to come up with them. It's already there. They just have to use them in whatever way they want. And the last tip for today would be to have your students write a 16-word story. Give students a topic, like a character's very disappointed. Maybe you could specify who the character is. You could tell students to write about a party where something surprising happens. The goal is for students to tell you as much as they can and be as descriptive as they can within that 16-word limit. So they need to tell as much of the story as possible in 16 words. Students can get very excited about this because they like the idea of only having to write 16 words, but it's much harder than they think. Now, these ideas are just the tip of the iceberg, but at least it will get you started. The fun thing about each of these is that every single student is going to interpret them in a different way. And so sharing them afterwards is a lot of fun because each and every student is going to come up with something completely different. And that makes it so cool to see how everyone interpreted the exact same topic so very differently. I put all of these ideas down into a little tip sheet for you, so if you want to grab that, you can. It'll be in the show notes. All right, my friends, that's it. We are out of time and I'm out of breath. Thanks so much for joining me today. If you liked today's episode, I'd love it if you'd go to Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen and leave a review. And while you're there, hit the subscribe button so you'll never miss an episode. Also, you can continue the conversation online with me in my Facebook group, the Teach Joyfully Podcast Community, where elementary teachers can connect, get help, and encouragement. for all kinds of education and parenting topics. You can find the show notes and all the links to resources mentioned in this episode on my website at www.hopeineducation.com/podcast. And remember, a happy teacher is a good teacher, and a happy mommy is a good mommy. Until next time, teach joyfully and take care of you.